You know that one person in your life who never panics when everything falls apart? Who stays weirdly calm in a crisis? Who can read a room the second they walk in? Who doesn't need your validation? And somehow, they also feel things deeper than anyone else you've ever met? Yeah, there's a reason for that. And it's not because they were born special. It's because life hit them so hard, so many times, that they had no choice but to become that person. Today we're talking about the psychology behind people who've carried too much. People who've been through loss, betrayal, failure, loneliness, sometimes all at once. Because here's the thing that most people don't realize. Extreme hardship doesn't just leave scars. It rewires you completely. And the traits that get built inside of a person who's truly suffered, they're some of the most powerful traits a human being can have. Let's get into it. The first thing you'll notice about someone who's been through a lot is that they have an almost unsettling ability to stay calm when things go wrong. Not because they don't care, but because they've already lived through their worst days. They've already sat with real fear, real grief, real rock-bottom moments. So when life throws something difficult at them now, some part of their nervous system goes, "I've seen worse. I survived worse." And that recognition, it's not a thought. It becomes a physical response over time. Psychologists call this stress inoculation. The idea is that repeated exposure to manageable levels of stress actually builds resilience in the brain. But when someone has gone through genuinely traumatic or overwhelming experiences and come out the other side, they develop something even deeper, a kind of quiet, unshakable steadiness. They don't spiral the way others do. They breathe. They think. They act. While everyone else is still panicking, they're already problem-solving. Now here's one that surprises people. These individuals tend to have an extraordinary level of emotional intelligence. And this happens because when you've suffered, you become fluent in pain. You learn to read the subtle signs of it in others. The forced smile, the tired eyes, the way someone says, "I'm fine," but their whole body is saying something different. They notice what most people miss. Not because they're trying to, but because they had to develop that skill to survive their own emotional world. They had to understand feelings, their own and eventually others, just to get through the day. And that process, over years, turns into genuine empathy. Not the performative kind. The deep, real kind that makes you feel truly seen when someone like this is in the room with you. But, and this is important, their empathy coexists with something that might look like coldness to an outsider. Emotional detachment. Distance. And this is where it gets psychologically fascinating. People who've been through prolonged pain often develop what researchers describe as emotional compartmentalization. They learned at some point that feeling everything all at once was simply not survivable. So the brain builds walls. Not to shut people out necessarily, but to function. To keep going. To not completely fall apart in the middle of an ordinary Tuesday. This is why these people can sometimes seem disconnected or hard to read. It's not that they don't feel. It's that they've become masters at managing when and how they feel.
There's a difference. And once you understand that difference, you stop calling them cold and start recognizing what they really are, which is incredibly strong. Something else that develops? A very low tolerance for fake things. Fake people, fake conversations, fake relationships. When you've genuinely suffered, you lose patience for anything that doesn't feel real. Small talk starts to feel like a waste of the limited time and energy you have. Shallow friendships start to feel worse than being alone. You've been through too much to sit at a table pretending to care about things that don't matter. This is why people who've carried a lot tend to have smaller social circles. Not because they can't connect, but because they refuse to settle for connections that don't go deep. They'd rather have one honest conversation than 10 pleasant, meaningless ones. And this trait, while it can sometimes make them seem antisocial or difficult, is actually rooted in one of the most psychologically healthy behaviors a human can develop: the ability to set boundaries around your own time and emotional energy without guilt. And then there's the independence. God, the independence. People who've been through a lot learn, sometimes painfully, that at the end of the day, you really are on your own. Not in a hopeless, bitter way, in a grounded, realistic way. They've been let down. They've been abandoned, maybe. They've asked for help, and it didn't come. And so they built the skill of relying on themselves, because they had to. They figured things out alone. They made decisions alone. They healed alone.
And what that creates is a person who doesn't need to be rescued, who doesn't make decisions based on fear of losing someone, who can walk away from things that aren't right for them because they trust completely that they'll figure it out on their own if they have to. That level of self-reliance is rare, and it is entirely forged by hardship. Here's one that gets overlooked almost entirely. People who've been through too much tend to have an incredibly accurate gut instinct. Their intuition is sharp in a way that's almost hard to explain. Part of this is neuroscience. Trauma and stress actually heighten the brain's pattern recognition systems. When you've had to navigate dangerous emotional territory, unsafe people, unpredictable environments, your brain gets very good, very fast at picking up on signals. It learns to detect threat before the conscious mind can even name it. Over time, this becomes intuition, that gut feeling that something is off about a person, even though they seem perfectly nice on the surface. That inner knowing that a situation is about to go wrong before any obvious signs appear. People who've been through a lot trust that feeling. They've learned not to argue with it, and more often than not, they're right. Now let's talk about something harder, something that doesn't get discussed enough when we talk about resilience and strength. A lot of these same people also struggle deeply with trust, not because they're paranoid or wounded in a weak sense, but because their experiences taught them, through very real evidence, that not everyone who shows up will stay, that people lie, that betrayal is real, that sometimes the people closest to you are the ones who cause the most damage. So trust doesn't come easily anymore. It's earned slowly, over time, through consistent actions. Not words. Anyone can say the right things. Actions. This can make their relationships complicated and slow-moving. But when someone who's been through a lot finally decides to trust you, that trust is one of the most solid things you will ever hold, because it wasn't given lightly. And perhaps the deepest trait of all, the one that quietly lives underneath everything else, is a relationship with meaning that most people don't develop until much later in life, if ever. People who've truly suffered tend to stop living on the surface. They stop chasing things that don't matter to them. They get very clear, very early about what they actually value. Not what they're supposed to value, not what looks good, what actually matters. Family, real work, peace, purpose. This is what Viktor Frankl talked about after surviving the Holocaust. That even in unimaginable suffering, the human mind reaches for meaning. And the people who survive their darkest chapters almost always come out the other side with a clarity about life that other people are still searching for. So if you know someone like this, someone who's been through it, understand something. What you're looking at is not a broken person. What you're looking at is someone who got cracked open by life, over and over again. And instead of shutting down completely, rebuilt, piece by piece, quietly, without much celebration or acknowledgement. And the person that process created? Calmer, deeper, sharper, more real, more independent, more empathetic, more intentional than almost anyone who's lived a comfortable life ever gets to be. And if this is you, if you're the one who's carried too much, survived too much, felt too much, I want you to hear this directly. The traits inside you right now, the ones that sometimes make you feel like you're too much, or too serious, or too guarded, those aren't your damage. Those are your depth. And the world, whether it knows it or not, needs people exactly like you in it. Don't shrink. Don't apologize for the way hardship shaped you. Wear it, because it didn't just survive inside you. It built you.